This week I got my first new character model for the game. It's the Priest, and I think it looks really good. The animations are still in progress and I can't wait to see the fully completed model in action. I will be making a dedicated video on the art revamp when more of the art has been completed, so stay tuned for that. A new enemy was added that gets stronger and larger over time. I had to create a character size scaling system that could be used for any spell to make this work. Another enemy was added that will throw bottles of poison at the player. You have to step out of the pools of poison to prevent the damage. I made an enemy cast bar so you can see what spell the enemy is casting. This is nice because you can actually see what the casters are doing rather than trying to make an educated guess based on limited game knowledge. I'm always a little bit worried about information overload, but I think this will clarify information significantly more than it overwhelms. A bonus to this is that it lets me design more engaging enemy mechanics without the game becoming too cryptic. I've added two new bosses. The first boss is an ice skeleton that starts out encased in a large block of ice. You can find an item called the Blazing Wand in the room with a single blazer that is unlit. Using the Blazing Wand on the blazer will heat up the room and melt the ice that the boss is encased in, thus starting the encounter. The boss has two main mechanics. The first mechanic is an AoE spell called Sheer Cold that will deal a large amount of damage depending on how cold the room is. The second mechanic is summoning skeletons that will cool the room down by extinguishing the blazes. You're going to want to kill these skeletons before they extinguish the blazes. Each blazer that is lit will reduce the damage dealt by the first mechanic, Sheer Cold. You want to use the Blazing Wand to reignite the blazes or alternatively deal a little bit of damage. It's a fun mechanic, and I'm keen on revisiting the boss room during the polishing phase of development to make it more epic. The second boss is a bit simpler. This boss will summon skeletons, and those skeletons will run towards the boss. If they reach the boss, they sacrifice themselves to give the boss a temporary damage buff that stacks and refreshes itself. The idea with this encounter is that you need to prevent the boss's damage buff from stacking too high by letting the buff expire. So after 8 stacks of Bone Fusion, which makes the boss deal 80% more damage, you want to make sure the buff falls off so the boss hits less hard. It's a simple mechanic but quite punishing if you can't do it correctly. I'm very interested in seeing what playtesters think about this encounter. The final thing I worked on this week was a new spell called Dark Mend. It's a cheap quick spell that will heal the target for a lot, but it will leave a debuff on the target that will deal 100% of the damage healed. What's cool about this spell is that you can cast a couple Dark Mends in a row and only deal with the debuff for one of the Dark Mends. If casted on enemies, it will deal damage and then heal the target over time for the damage dealt. The damage for Dark Mend include precautionary measures that will make the debuff significantly less effective if there is an absorption shield on the target. Preserving the host, which will make it so that the debuff does significantly less damage if the target is at or less than 25% HP. Delayed Demise will make the debuff only deal 40% of the original damage, but it can now be stacked up to 5 times, meaning that the original strategy of spamming the spell is now actually way worse. Fair Trade will check if a heal over time buff on the target is there, and if there is, all heal over time effects will be consumed and the debuff will not be applied. Dark Addiction will reduce the cast time of Dark Mend by 0.5 seconds, but the debuff now does its full effect over a shorter period of time. And finally, Dark Inversion. Instead of healing your allies, Dark Mend will now deal damage to them and provide a healing over time effect for 200% of the damage dealt. For enemies, the effect is now heal, but damages them for 200% of the amount healed. And that's my update for the week. Check out the free demo on Steam if you want to try out the game.